Deep mind is a deeply entrusting mind. There are two aspects. One is to deeply and decidedly that you are believe that you are a foolish being of karmic evil, caught in birth and death, ever sinking and ever wandering in transmigration from innumerable kalpas in the past, with never a condition that will lead to emancipation. The second is to believe deeply and decidedly that Amida Buddha's 48 vows grasp sentient beings, and that allowing yourself to be carried by the power of the vow without any doubt or apprehension, you will attain birth. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 Well, good morning again, everyone. So today I'd like to introduce you to a concept that isn't really talked about here in Jodo Shinshu too much, but I think it's a crucially important point to understand in order to understand what the Nembutsu path is. So normally in Buddhism, in our Sunday services, we talk about the term gratitude, right? You might have heard this before. Gratitude this, gratitude that. Be grateful for this life. Be grateful for your family. Be grateful for this and that, right? But oftentimes I get this sense that the term is thrown around lightly, as if to say that Jodo Shinshu is just about saying thank you to everyone, right? It is, right? It is, but it is also much more than that. We eventually come to say thank you to everyone and everything around us. But what brings us to why we do that is very important, and there's a very profound teaching there. So oftentimes when my son wants to play, he comes to my room and says, Papa, let's play, right? Papa, let's play. But I tell him, oh no, I'm too busy right now. Go play by yourself over there somewhere. And then so I tell him to run along, right? But then there are times when I look at my cell phone, right, and I see pictures of when he's a lot younger, right? And then I could see that he's progressed and he's gotten bigger, right, in this short time span. And so I think to myself, I should spend more time with my child. I think, why do I keep telling him that I'm too busy? I should make a more concerted effort to be with my son, be with my kids, right? Or be with my child, right? And so I deeply regret, this. But then the next day, he comes to my room and he says, Papa, let's play. And then I say, the exact same thing, right? Oh, Papa's too busy, go run along, play by yourself, right? And that's what happens, right? Kick is in the end, right? So there will come a day that he won't come to my room anymore, right? There will come a day where he will spend more time with his friends or playing video games, and he won't ask me to play anymore, right? And I'm dreading this day, right? But the point that I wanted to make was that even if I told myself I needed to spend more time with him, I can't, or maybe I wouldn't, right? I go back to my work and I forget. And this is what it means to be a bombu, the ignorant person, as it is called. Being grateful is the same way, right? We're told to be grateful all of our lives, be grateful in every moment, right? Live in the moment. We've all heard this before, right? But soon we forget, right? How is it really easy to live in the moment? Actually, no, it's very difficult to live in the moment, right? We go back to business as usual. We're not really grateful of our lives. Usually it doesn't happen until some event happens in our life, right? Usually catastrophic, which makes us actually become grateful in that moment. But even then, we will soon forget that very important point. And this is what Shinran Shonin is referring to as the bombu, the forgetful person. The bombu is a person with blind passions, a person who is caught in spiritual ignorance. So Shinran Shonin came to understand this nature of the mind of delusion, the bombu, but it is an understanding that he is a person incapable of attaining enlightenment through his own power, that he was able to find true happiness in being embraced in Amida Buddha's great compassion. So this realization of the true nature of the self, the bombu, is very difficult to do. Shinran awakened to his true being, a person full of blind passions. And it is in this understanding that he has this feeling of what we call in Japanese haji, okay, which is what I want to focus on today. And haji in Japanese is a word for shame and self-reproach. Another phrase for this word haji is true self-reflection and humility. When we awaken to our true nature as beings of blind passions, we have a sense of shame, self-reproach, true self-reflection, and humility. Here in America, when we hear the word shame, we immediately get turned off, right? There's a lot of heavy connotation to this word. And so I think another word that we can use that might be better fitting for us Buddhists is humility. Okay, so humility is the recognition of one's limitations as a human being. Because we have this sense of deep blind passions and karmic misguidance, we become humble in our stature and attitude in how we face others and how we treat ourselves as well. We no longer become arrogant, overconfident, conceited, because we know that we have just as much greed, anger, and ignorance as others around us. But here's the difference between Shinshu and perhaps some of these other religious traditions. In Jodo Shinshu, there cannot be humility without joy, right? Humility and joy come hand in hand. Why? Well, because Shinran Shonin awakened to his true self as a person of blind passions, but in that same moment, at the same time, he awakened to the understanding that he was embraced in infinite wisdom and compassion. In other words, he immediately understood that because he was a person of blind passions, that Amida Buddha's great compassion would not abandon him. So while we have humility on the one hand, we also have joy on the other hand in knowing that we will be okay. So humility in Jodo Shinshu should not be discussed in terms of negative or positive, right? Rather, humility is this feeling that arises in us when we awaken to our true state, right? When we awaken to this Bombu self, right? Which in turn makes us joyful of having this life. So Shinran Shonin was a very humble person. He knew that he could not escape what we call the three poisons in Buddhism: greed, anger, and ignorance. Or as one famous Jodo Shinshu minister puts it, greed, anger, and stupidity. Gas. Okay, we all have gas, right? That's the common teaching that I was told. For example, in many places in his writings, Shinran Shonin is very humble, and he doesn't talk down to people. He speaks in a very polite tone. Uh, um, and in other places, he admits to himself that on the outside he puts on airs, but on the inside he feels very fake and insincere, right? So what he writes, I feel every time I speak at Sunday services, right? Every time I have to give a talk on Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, on Buddhism, I feel that same way, right? When I speak and talk about Buddhism or Shinran's thoughts, I always think to myself, who am I to be able to talk about Shinran's thoughts or as if I know everything there is to know about Buddhism. So when we see Shinran Shonin, this great Buddhist minister and Nembutsu follower, talk in this way in a very humble tone, we feel an immediate connection, right, with his honesty. In a sense, each of us wake up and we go to work. We also have to put on airs and pretend to be like we know it all, or that we are good people who do not have any troubles, right? What's the phrase? Fake it till you make it, right? Fake it till you make it, right? But really, what person doesn't have problems, right? What person doesn't feel insecure about their knowledge in their professions? What person doesn't feel like a hypocrite when they have to try to teach their kids how to be good people when we ourselves have trouble following our own rules, right? When Shinran Shonin is brutally honest with himself, we see how a Nembutsu person should act in this world. And by following his lead, we too become people who, in recognizing our own shortcomings, tap into a world of deep meaning. Yes, Shinran Shonin did have a deep sense of humility and shame, but it is in this humility where he also finds great joy in realizing that he is embraced in the world of truth. In Zen Buddhism, Dogen, the founder, emphasized the relationship between teacher and student, right? So this idea of what we call Dharma transition, right? From teacher to student is very important in Buddhism. Even in Jodo Shinshu, right? 7 masters, it comes through Shakyamuni and then the 7 masters down to Shinran, right? So Dharma transmission is very important. However, What is interesting is that Shinran does not take the same teacher to student relationship as Dogen does when it comes to him and others. Instead, he takes on a Dharma friend approach, okay, Dharma friend approach, which in Japanese is called Ondobo Ondogyo, okay? In other words, Shinran considered himself equal to all others because in the eyes of Amida Buddha, he himself is the recipient of great compassion. Isn't that interesting? He felt he was in no position to be telling others about the Buddha Dharma. In fact, in his letters to others, as I mentioned, he speaks in a very polite tone and he never takes on the teacher position. And he also at one point even says, quote, he says, Shinran wa deshi ichirin mo motarazu soro, right? I, Shinran, do not have even a single disciple. I do not have a single disciple. And this speaks to this attitude of humility, the idea that we are all equal before the eyes of Amida Buddha. So we should greatly revere this person who is such a profoundly deep person to have such a profoundly honest and humble personality. This is also why Shinran Shonin doesn't go into detail about ethics and how we should act in society. In many religions, the followers are told how to behave, right? And you're supposed to take these kinds of stances on these certain issues, right? You're supposed to vote in this way on this election, right? But Jodo Shinshu Buddhism does not do that too much, right? Actually, we often get criticized for being too free, right? And people perceive us to be too wishy-washy or indecisive in our social stances, right? We do not tell our followers how to think or how to vote or how to act in society. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons is that Shinran Shonin did not feel that it was his place to tell other people how to live their lives. He, again, through his deep sense of deep humility, understood that given that he is a person of blind passions, it was not his place to be telling other people how to behave in society. So, for better or for worse, Jodo Shinshu does not tell its followers that they have to follow this set list of do's and don'ts, and this is what a Buddhist is, right? So, as Nembutsu followers, we have this freedom to choose the best course of action for ourselves. But that freedom also has with it the responsibility, right? That we have to make our own decisions for ourselves. So returning back to my point, today I wanted to address this point about haji, or humility in Buddhism. When we awaken to the true self, a person is caught in blind passions with never a chance to true spiritual liberation, but there arises within us a true self-reflection and humility there. And it is this sense of humility that gives us this great sense of joy. So please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we should, beat ourselves up or, self-deprecate to the point that we should be depressed with ourselves, right? I'm not saying that at all. Shinran Shonin is not explaining that at all, right? He is trying to show that when we come to this understanding of true humility, at the same time, there is this true joy that we awaken to as well. And this humility and joy come in a pair. And that is how we can live our lives, how we can strive to be. We can aspire to be this as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists. So, when Jodo Shinshu says, be grateful of this life, be grateful of that, it is true that we are saying to be grateful, but there's a difference between being just simply grateful and deep gratitude, right? This deep gratitude is when we awaken to the world of truth, where we are truly embraced by wisdom and compassion. And because we awaken to that, we then become grateful for everything in this life. Okay, so that is a very kind of important point about deep gratitude in Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. So Jodo Shinshu Buddhism is not just a simple thank you to everybody, but that we become deeply grateful for encountering this world of absolute truth and being embraced in Amida Buddha's great compassion. Okay, so with that, I would like to end today. Please join me in Gassho. So Shinran Shonin writes these following words. Deep mind is the deeply entrusting mind. There are two aspects. One is to believe deeply and decidedly that you are a foolish being of karmic evil, caught in birth and death, ever sinking and ever wandering in transmigration from innumerable kalpas in the past, with never a condition that would lead to emancipation. The second is to believe deeply and decidedly that Amida's 48 vows grasp sentient beings, and that allowing yourself to be carried by the power of the vow without any doubt or apprehension, you will attain birth. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.